You get automatically cross-site scripted on an intranet site, and you fire all the data outside. But a lot of people, will ask, well, how did you know that site was there? We mentioned, history hacking and things like that. How do you know it's vulnerable? Well, because it kind of all is. But the other one is Robert's kind of a master at getting data leakage on.
Go back one slide.
Oh, one slide.
One quick note on this before we move on. This doesn't actually have to involve you being out on the internet. It can also be a man-in-the-middle attack, where the man-in-the-middle has, using AirPwn or whatever, has the ability, and it doesn't have to be wireless, it could be physical connection, it doesn't matter. He has the ability to inject or change content before it hits your browser. Basically, I just beat the packet back and you accept my data. Which means that if I can force you to go to a web page, let's say NoScript, for instance, limits you to going to Mozilla.org. It's running JavaScript only in that context. Well, that's fine, because if you're surfing Google.com, which doesn't use HTTPS, I can brute force, send packets, try to beat it back. iframe Mozilla.org, and it doesn't matter that Mozilla.org immediately redirects you to HTTPS because I'm the man in the middle. So I basically get rid of that redirection, run my JavaScript. Now I'm running JavaScript despite the fact that you've got no script.
So to continue on that point, how do we know so much about this intranet? How do we find out more information about a corporate intranet than we should have? And Robert has a lot of logs as far as intranet host names that you probably shouldn't have.
Right. So thanks to all of my readers. You guys feed me a lot of information you probably shouldn't. These aren't the best of my logs. The best of my logs I probably should never, ever post. But these are just a couple of examples. Corporate intranets, Reactor, corp.google.com, Standard Life, eFunds, HP, Boeing, CNET. You name the big company, I probably got it in my logs. Someone inadvertently clicked on some link from some internal application. I guess my site gets linked to a lot on internal websites on what not to do. That's not necessarily a good way to surf the internet. But point being is now I know a lot more about your intranet. I know your naming standards. I know if it's a really weird thing like Pokemon names or something, I just feed in a list into my Fierce, and I start brute force enumerating through your DNS. And suddenly I got a lot more information about your intranet than I should have, including RFC 1918 address spaces, assuming that you're using a RFC 1918.
So refer leakage is everywhere. You click it on the internet website and you leak the refer to whoever the bad guy happens to be.
Yep.
So
and it doesn't actually. I didn't have to be badguy.com. I just have to have access to somebody's logs that you've linked to. So just because you're not doing this to my site, it's irrelevant. You could be doing it to some very good site, but I've hacked into them, and now I've got their logs too. So
aren't a lot of people using all the JavaScript code that we put on the server, like the Stallone defacement stuff,
yes.
right?
Yeah. I get a lot of people testing internet applications for cross-site scripting, and knowingly they are doing something that's trying to protect them, but in doing so, they're http://hackers.org, blah, blah, blah. And when that pulls in my JavaScript or my scriptlet or whatever, I get the refers. So I actually try to ignore that stuff because I want you guys to keep testing because it's important. But you guys send me a lot more data than you probably should.
So in case you missed it, the attack AirPwn plus cross-site scripting plus CSRF equals Arian's idea, circa 2004 actually, and this gets really worse when you're on the wireless out there. So that when you're surfing the wireless out there and people are responding before you, it gets really nasty. The man-in-the-middle stuff.
So there's actually one more attack real quick. So let's say I don't actually necessarily have to have JavaScript enabled. So let's say NoScript is perfect and I've completely disabled JavaScript. If I can send data back like an iframe or something, forcing you to go to some webmail server that doesn't use HTTPS, I can suddenly now I get to read all that data being transmitted back. So even though you never actually went there during that session, it doesn't matter. As long as you were authenticated at some point, you didn't shut down your browser, people just close their laptops and reopen them where they're at. If your credentials are still there, I can force your browser to go there, and the data gets transmitted back over the wire, and I just sniff it all. So even though you didn't intentionally go there, I force you to, and I get to see all the data.
At this point, judging by the audience, if you're not tired, you enter the depression stage. And Some people might be considering moving back to Lynx or Telnet, whichever you prefer.
I'm pretty sure I have a DNS rebinding exploit in wget. So
actually, we should post on our sites like the download to Lynx.
Yeah.
So just
this site works best in Lynx.
so a lot of times, web security is an oxymoron. It doesn't kind of exist too much anymore. Firewalls and NAT aren't what they used to be. Definitely, the browser's patched. So what, right? It's a good thing to do, but we could still do everything we could before. Even if you guys are not the target in this room, you guys are the security aware, you guys are not the ones that are the targets. Your coworkers are. That's kind of the deal. Browser security in general needs a big, serious rethink. I mean, all these attacks didn't exist when the browser was being developed, so we might have to enter a new evolution of browser security design, and I hope it comes soon. Browser add-ons help, but a lot of times only by seriously hobbling the user experience, and if they do, the users won't adopt them. And then remote users and VPN connections are definitely open to exploitation in a variety of ways, as Robert showed. And if you made it to this stage, right, and you can suffer through the depression, you get to acceptance, right? The web is a hostile place. We've known that for a while. There's malware stuff all over the place. There's tons of research papers that, every third page has some kind of malware on it, or whatever the statistics happen to be. And what's the browser security models out there? A lot of people have started using. Our colleagues actually have been telling me this. They're actually surfing with 2 web browsers. I actually surf with 2 web browsers. One for all my primary business-oriented stuff, which I don't surf anywhere else except the very trusted web pages, and I do everything else with the other browser. And I patch, bash, disable everything I can on it, unless I forget. So you can stack up the security add-ons, but we've shown that a lot of those can be circumvented in a number of ways, depending on the configuration of the browser. There's some great tools out there that helps, better than nothing. Another good solution is to log out, clear cookies, or clear history periodically, or as often as you can stomach it, really. Logging out is definitely a good idea. And definitely, we shouldn't use laptops like firewalls and rely upon them to separate internets from internets. Yeah. And I think Robert and I both agree on this one. We have the browser guys probably in the room here, so we have the bully pulpit here too. We get one wish. So if we have one wish, we would like public web pages should not be able to initiate requests to internal IPs. We cannot think of any valid use case where that is really necessary.
Not necessary.
It will cut out probably everything that we've done here with probably 2 lines of code. Yep. I mean, we can't think of a time where a public website needs to connect to internal NATed IP address. It shouldn't be possible. I think it was mentioned before in the earlier talk doing the same thing with for DNS rebinding too.
Now that also includes localhost, which would break a number of things though. That would break things like Google Desktop, for instance, which needs to connect to localhost.
I'd even allow that one and take off, I don't need them attacking my DSL router.
That's true.
So
wait till we get to cups.
Now,
that will be a problem later in this speech.
So content restrictions. A lot of actually found out that not a lot of people know about this one, including the browser vendors, even though it's been around for the concept's been around for a while.
So I should briefly talk about this one. So basically, let's say a browser trusts me because I'm a big website. Well, that's great, except big websites also happen to be where I put all of my personal information into, and they also happen to be incredibly dynamic places. They also happen to be fairly insecurely built. Lots of XSS, cross-site request forgeries, all kinds of stuff. So really what I want as a big website is to be able to tell the browsers, okay, you trust me? Well, trust me to tell you that I'm not trustworthy. Allow me to tell you to turn off extra features, ability to do ActiveX controls or whatever. Just don't do that. This site is not trustworthy. So content restrictions is the whole concept is either some sort of header or some sort of global policy or file or something that says these parts of the page are off limits, or don't run this, don't open new whatever, whether it's iframes or new DOMs, or don't have JavaScript access or whatever. And so this idea I originally came up with it 3.5, 4 years ago, and it's kind of circled the community a couple times, and we still don't have it. So.
And that actually might be the new web security policy of the future. I mean, allow the sites to dictate their own policy.
It could be a really great thing for big websites. It's not going to be very effective for mom and pop's website, but it also could theoretically be useful for internet websites as well, where I say my site is trustworthy only to this level. A lot of people don't secure intranets very well, so that also could be an interesting avenue.
So content restrictions, if you Google that. Sorry. You'll find the policy for it. Website security. We've covered the browser security, so what can you do to protect your website? In the business I'm in, we meet with a lot of big customers, but the first thing we always tell them to make sure you find your websites. A lot of times if you have more than 5, you don't know where they are. So go find your websites and asset track them. You want to measure their security. What I mean by that is you want to perform vulnerability assessments. You want to find the vulnerability before the bad guys do because they're looking. And if you consider, Robert's site here, 1,000 sites have already been shown to have cross-site scripting in them, and those are probably the good guys.
And I think that's about 1,000, and we've checked about 1,200. So that's not like that's all the websites. That's just the ones that the people, opportunistic, they just went there, hey, it's vulnerable, and they posted it.
And development frameworks. We've seen great improvements in security gains as far as developers using good development frameworks over everything else. And then defense in depth, things that just add more roadblocks, whether web app firewalls, removing, standard default error messages and things like that. The one thing we'll cover, just in passing because we don't have enough time, is cups hacking. Now for the people with the Apple logo on the back like mine, this is great for you guys, or even the Unix guys. There's a URL here that you should be aware of. And that's localhost port 631. There's a cups interface on it, right? And it has all your print history there. Everything you've ever printed is in your cups history. You can use a nice cross-site scripting hack, nice man in the middle, some DNS rebinding, and you can pilfer that data very quickly, very easily. And if you've ever configured a printer on your OS X, it's listening. So, that's there as well.
That's a new way to do fax spam or printer spam. Start seeing it on your printer.
So that kind of brings us to the end here. Any questions? We have actually. Let me make a couple announcements first. Actually, I think our publisher made us say we're having a book signing outside of the press room. So if you want to catch up with us there, there's also the WASP party, OS WASP party at 8 p.m. at Shadow, and there's CartCon that's being organized by this gentleman right here. Raise your hand here in the blue shirt there at 10 p.m. tonight. Any questions, please? Questions, and the first 2 questions get a free book signed by Robert and myself. Yes, thank you.